I'm Ann Kelly. I'm gallery director here at Zaguan, which is home of the historic Santa Fe Foundation. I'd like to thank everybody for spending their afternoon with us and becoming part of our creative community. We really appreciate you joining us. So we're here today with Elaine Ritchel, who is a painter, educator, writer, and founder of Santa Fe Art Tours, which is a popular Canyon Road tour, which has also been featured on CNN. So Elaine holds an MA in art history and has worked as a gallery teacher and guest educator with art institutions in the US and abroad. This exhibition is on view through May 9th, so it's up for one more week. So please tell your family, friends, other art enthusiasts, come on over, see the show. For those who may not know, we are a 501c3 nonprofit, and we have artist studios in the property, which has been a tradition for almost 100 years. And if anyone is considering purchasing any of the pieces from this exhibition or our gift shop, just know that the proceeds do support local artists as well as the foundation's mission. And in terms of amazing things Elaine has, in addition to her original paintings, well, there's also some small watercolors, which are also original paintings, and then there's some prints over here as well. And for today's programming, Elaine and I will be in conversation for about 30 minutes. Then we're going to do a 15-minute Q&A with the audience. So store up those questions, and then that'll be followed by an activity, which we'll find out a little bit more about after the Q&A. So that is what we have planned today. And congratulations on your beautiful exhibition.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all for coming today, and thank you, Anne, for the beautiful introduction.
Absolutely. So, I've had a lot of interesting conversations with people recently who know you from the art world, but had no idea that you made art. And so that's been an interesting, reoccurring thing. So, would you like to touch on that?
Yeah, sure. So for those of you who aren't maybe familiar with Santa Fe Art Tours, this is a company that I founded 10 years ago in December, and I've been doing tours of the Santa Fe art scene since then. So yes, a lot of people know me here in that context, and I've heard similar things where people say, I had no idea that you make art. And I guess I can just speak to that in terms of like creative evolution or artistic evolution. I have known since I was a child that I wanted to be involved in the arts. I just didn't know what that looked like. And so as a kid, I spent a lot of time painting and drawing, and my grandpa was an artist and we would paint together. But I ended up going into art history, and I loved learning about the stories behind the art and studying all of these incredible artists. But it actually put a damper on my creative drive. And I think that was in large part because looking at all of these great artists all the time and, thinking about the concepts they were working with, I started to question whether or not I had skill and whether or not I had something to say, something important to say. So there was a long time where I basically quit making art. It was very sporadic. Here and there I would pick up some watercolors and paint. I started doing that a little more in 2020. A lot of people were making bread. I was, starting to paint a little, but it was still very sporadic until a couple of years ago. I actually, an advertising company reached out to me. They were working with Play-Doh, and they wanted a special tour of the galleries here, and also this component where they would work with an artist who was sculpting with Play-Doh, and it was to try and kind of bring new life to the brand and get adults involved. And so in that process, I started playing, and that was the key. I think like being in the academic world and also being a perfectionist or a recovering perfectionist, it's a slow process, but it's happening. I had forgotten that it was okay to play. And so that really unlocked something. And also having someone in my life who's a big supporter of my work and kind of a mentor in a way and a creative collaborator, I started making stuff, and it was very exploratory at first. And then, it became more frequent. And then with the opportunity here at Zaguán, and I'm happy to talk about that a little bit too, actually having a dedicated space to make art changed everything. So for the first time in my life, I've been able to make work in earnest and also on a larger scale. So prior to this residency here, I was doing little pieces like that, those 5x7 watercolors, or like the pieces that you see here, very small, very tight. And so having the space and the support really allowed me to make work. So here I am in a new role.
I love the Play-Doh story. So do you still have any Play-Doh? Are you doing any? Didn't make you want to become a sculptress?
I have done a couple of sculptures since then. Never something that I thought I would do, tiny pieces, tiny pieces. I was completely intimidated by 3 dimensions. It was fun to work with, but I think at heart I am a painter. Yeah.
But the Play-Doh got you going.
It did. The Play-Doh got me going. I highly recommend it, actually, because you can't really screw it up, like you just get in there and play. Yeah.
I've always thought play was a key ingredient in the art making process. And I could also relate to having gone to art school and experienced just that version of the art world, and then in working in galleries. I can relate to what you're saying about you're experiencing all of these amazing artists, and then you start to question things. So
yeah, and you kind of, I think, I don't know if this was your experience as well, but this sense of like whatever I make has to be incredible, like no room to just explore.
When you're working with the greats, it's hard to not feel that way. But I'm glad you started playing, so that's great. And for people who don't know about our resident artist program, backing up, you had a little history with this building as well, through tours and coming here for other reasons. Was it last August that you, time is flying.
I know.
So you applied last summer, and could you talk a little more on that?
Yeah. So I do have a long and really dear history with this building. I think I came to it the first time in like 2015, so right after I had moved to Santa Fe, and I was just kind of wandering around and ran into someone who happened to be a resident artist here, Max, who invited me to a salon that was happening that evening. And I wasn't going to come because, at that point in time, I felt like I was probably the youngest person in Santa Fe. That's changed a little bit. Santa Fe's changed a little bit. I've changed a little bit. I've gotten a little older. But yeah, at that point, I just kind of thought it was going to be more of the same, and was just really surprised to discover this whole community of artists, all different ages, but younger artists as well, who were at this event. And I kind of felt at home in Santa Fe for the first time. And I started my tour company not too long after that, and this is a regular stop on our Canyon Road tours. It has an incredible history, and it has been housing artists for 100 years now. So really incredible history, incredible ambiance, and the mission here is just wonderful. So I've been bringing people here on tours for ages, 10 years now, and it was always a dream to live here. Like I would think, oh, if only I could, have one of these spaces that are for artists and writers here at El Zaguan. That would be so incredible. But at this point, as we've kind of touched on, I did not consider myself an artist. So it just seemed out of the question. I was a writer, so I thought, well, okay, maybe there's some way I can tie that in. But after starting to make work again, when I heard that an apartment was becoming available, I realized that I had enough of a body of work to submit a portfolio. And so that's what I did. I said as part of my project here, what I wanted to do was go bigger. I didn't know what that would look like or what medium or anything like that. Yes, so from that to that. And yes, have been here since August, and it is just really incredible being here. Yeah. And
so, like you said, part of what you wanted to use the studio for is you wanted to play a little more. You wanted to experiment with scale, and I know you were experimenting with other mediums, some pastel. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yes. So the process of going from small scale watercolor to large scale acrylic, that was a process of figuring that out. Do you want to speak on that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, it definitely was a process. I really didn't know how I was going to go bigger. I didn't know what medium I wanted to use. I actually thought that I didn't really like acrylic because I had only used it, maybe in like high school. And it's like very bright and very opaque and had this kind of texture that I wasn't wild about. I did experiment with pastel, which I love. However, going bigger is challenging with with pastel. So I finally, I think the turning point was I went down to Artisan, and they have all of these different acrylic mediums there that you can like mix with the paint and get different textures and so on. And I just picked up a few of those because again, this is like very exploratory. I had maybe 2 art classes in college, but I'm primarily self-taught, and I just try things and figure things out, which is uncomfortable for me. Again, like the perfectionism thing, but the play, being able to embrace that. So I picked up all of these different acrylic mediums and just started messing with them. And at first I thought, this is going nowhere. And then eventually I hit on being able to, like, realizing that I could use acrylic almost like watercolor, where I'm using a lot of an acrylic matte medium to where the paint is almost translucent. And so then it becomes this process of building up very, very thin layers to create these moments that are almost translucent, or where light is coming through. So once I figured out how to work with it a little more like watercolor, I realized I really actually enjoy it quite a bit.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because in just spending the last few weeks with your paintings, there's something unique in my mind that you're doing with acrylic. It doesn't really look like acrylic, and it does feel very watercolor influenced, just the way that your brush strokes and just so the layers, that definitely makes sense. And I've actually overheard a few people say that they thought it was oil. So that's a nice compliment. Pass that on.
Yes. And I think acrylic felt a little bit more accessible to me. I love oil painting as well. I haven't done much of it. I've just done a little bit. And it's really fun, and especially after working with something like watercolor or acrylic, oil you can just play with. But it's a little less accessible in ways. And so I wanted to kind of stick with acrylic for the show. But yeah, thanks for letting me know how people are responding to it. I think you mentioned something about the brushwork, and that's been really interesting to figure out as well. There's a piece back there, it's called Communion. It's the blue one with the full moon. That one looked completely different when I started it. And I mean, it was clouds. I had a sense of what I wanted to do, but I got, I was trying to blend too much, and it didn't work at all. And I looked at it, I remember, I just thought, oh my gosh, what am I doing? I have no idea what I'm doing. I shouldn't even be doing this. And then I came back to the studio the next day, completely painted over it, and it turned into that. But I had to remind myself to stay really loose with the brushwork and not try to paint clouds exactly as they look, but how they feel to me. And then, that resulted in an image that worked. So
sometimes you just have to paint
over
over
a piece.
and yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's part of the process. And then clouds, they're an ever changing element, I will call them. So, clouds are actually pretty rough. We see them every day in New Mexico. We have some of the best clouds anywhere. So it's a challenging thing to depict, and you really have the motion and the light and the movement. Is that just, would you say, kind of intuitive to you, or I don't know, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, thank you. Clouds, they can be tough. I am captivated by them for multiple reasons, but in terms of visually and how to handle them as an artist, I really like the idea that they both have form and they're formless. And so when I was trying to figure out how to paint clouds, I didn't want them to feel static, like a static shape. And so I was like, the image itself is static, but how do I capture that sense of clouds actually moving and breathing? And to me, they do have life force, they have presence. And so I wanted that to come through in the work. And I think probably having played with watercolor first helped a lot with this, because the way that I approach clouds in watercolor is very loose and just letting the medium do a lot of the work and the paper do a lot of the work. So different process, obviously, with the acrylic. There were a couple of moments where I started painting clouds and they felt much too static. I was thinking of them more as shapes at that point than layers. So again, it comes back to that process where I'm just starting with very, very thin layers and sort of building them up as I go. I do look at photos, not with every piece, but with some pieces to get a sense of, the general shape of the clouds. And then I kind of turn away from that and just let it unfold intuitively.
And I feel like you had mentioned some were inspired by photographs, but maybe multiple photographs. So one was a specific mountain range, but then had clouds inspired by another location.
Yeah. I do like using photographs as a point of reference. Again, not all the time, but it is really helpful. And this is very much a show about New Mexico and the horizon line and the skyscapes that you see here. So the big triptych over here, those are mountains. Those are the Jemez Mountains, but from Velarde, which is between here and Taos. So that's the mountain range. There are some things that changed in there, there's some hills that turned into these sort of ambiguous trees, and it's actually a very lush area, a lot of agriculture, but I wanted it to feel more like a desert expanse. But the sky of that piece was actually inspired by a photograph of sky over Chimayo. So I found a couple of different references that I liked, and it evolved from there. So I'll use the photographs as kind of like a starting point for composition or like the overall feeling of a piece, but then it really takes a departure as I play with colors and light and so on. Same with that piece in the back there, skyward. That is a cloud formation that I saw, took a picture of in northern New Mexico. It's just amazing what we get to see here on a daily basis. But it also changed quite a bit.
So I feel like in art making, some artists depict what they see and other artists depict what they feel. And I feel like you might be doing both. Is there any truth to that?
Yeah, I would say that's very accurate. These are things that I see all the time. Moving through the world in New Mexico, the horizon line, we've talked a little bit about that, how it's sort of like living here. It becomes part of your psyche, like it's there all the time. It's like how you orient yourself and how you relate to the world. I'm obsessed with the moon as kind of like a presence in my life that has a lot of meaning for me, but it's also something that we see all of the time. But absolutely, like I'm not, it's funny because with these pieces, when I tried to get a little bit more detailed or realistic, or like even in the triptych over there, I was like, should I work with the foreground a little more? It just wasn't right, because I really did want these pieces to be about the feeling of the place, like to put people there. So they're not really like hung up on the details so much, but more about the feeling of that landscape or the feeling of being immersed in the clouds. So yeah, for me, it's very much both. And I hope that's the sense that it gives other people too.
That's been my sense, but sometimes that was the interpretation I got, so yes. And so you figured out how to go big. Mm-hmm. Are you hooked? Or are you going back?
I'm totally hooked. Like, after I painted this one, so this was like it was very scary to me. It was very intimidating. I mean, even this is like the first piece that I did back here that wasn't just a little 5x7 watercolor. And even that felt like really big to me. And I was not planning on doing something at this scale. And this person I mentioned, who is, very encouraging of my work, said I needed something big for that wall. I was not planning to put, a piece that's that big there, but he thought that should be the statement piece, and brought me the canvases and said, you don't have to put anything on them, but here they are. And I just sort of stared at them for a week. I was really fighting it at first, and then this thing happened where they started like calling to me. And I put down the first layer of paint, and then I kept putting down layers of paint. And so it actually was really fun. I loved the process. And after I painted that one, I had a friend help me go get more big canvases. So yeah, I think I'm addicted now.
Are you going to go?
Is it more feeling with those?
Is it more feeling?
From doing that larger, do you feel it more?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question.
Because it's a kind of a full body experience.
It is. Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's a different kind of feeling. Like with those little pieces over there in the back, I'm just kind of like trying to put myself back into that state, the state I was in when I was painting. they're very emotive for me. I mean, there is a lot of feeling in it, but yeah, you're absolutely right. With the bigger pieces, it becomes this sort of like whole body somatic experience where I even had to figure out how to paint them together. So at first I was like setting them against the wall and then moving them to the floor and like hovering over them and painting and then moving them back to the wall, you know. So it was kind of like this dance with the paintings in a way that was really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I recall a few times stopping by your studio and you were on the floor working on the lower portions of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I would sit, I mean, I obviously, like, I couldn't put them up on an easel, so I was sitting on the floor in front of them, which was also, it's very fun. Again, it reminds me of like the childhood play kind of thing, like sitting on the floor getting covered in paint. So, yeah.
That said, you do have one of the cleaner artist studios I've ever visited.
I know, as that was coming out of my mouth, I'm like, that's how I envision it, but I'm actually pretty tidy, so like covered in paint is like a smear here or there. Yeah, I was trying. Yeah.
So you're teaching a workshop here next Saturday, which is sold out, but we had talked about the possibility of doing a second, so if anybody is interested and didn't get in, you can talk to either one of us and we can see about that. So you do teach workshops from time to time, and as part of your tours, you are a teacher. You've been a teacher over the years. Do you think the teaching affects the art you're making? Is that separate, or?
I think... yeah, that's a great question. I think the kind of teaching that I do on tours definitely impacts the work. So I mentioned studying art history, but I also come from a museum education background. And I learned this approach to museum education that's quite interactive and really centered around inviting people to engage with the artwork through a process, which we will get to try out in a little bit. But it helps me to think about making art in a different way. I think like in talking with people about art, at this point, it has been thousands of people that I have been chatting with and really seeing how they respond to artwork and what they look for and how they interpret certain things. I think I am sort of thinking from the experience of the viewer quite a bit, or at least I try to. This is it's a personal body of work. You know, it does relate to my experiences and where I am in life. But I was also thinking all the time about how I wanted to translate these feelings that we've talked about for the viewer, so that they will, receive that. And it's really, lovely when people come in and tell me what they think about the work, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's exactly what I wanted. So great. In terms of like teaching watercolors, that's a really interesting process too, because a lot of what I do is kind of intuitive, and then seeing other people work with a medium that they've never worked with, I have to really think through how I do certain things and what kind of techniques I may be using and how to translate that. So I think that probably informs the work as well.
Right. Maybe, makes you become a little more conscious of it, or conscious of it.
Yeah.
It's like if you're playing the piano, you're not thinking about the keys, and when you're painting, the same. So
yes,
I would imagine that's helpful in some ways.
Definitely, yeah. It brings a different understanding to the work and to what I'm doing. Yeah.
So what's next for you? More clouds? Are there some new paintings in your studio already?
There's one piece that's sort of in progress. I had the opportunity to do live painting recently at an event. Yeah, it was pretty cool, out at the Four Seasons. I was just painting while everybody was arriving for their welcome cocktail hour, like painting the landscape out there. It was a lot of fun. I invited some people to paint with me, so that was great. Definitely, yeah. I'm just kind of, it's wild because before that I hated when people watched me paint, and now here I am painting and teaching classes and doing live painting. So it's pretty cool how these things shift and change. But yeah, more clouds probably. I am very obsessed with them. If I could just paint clouds all the time, I totally would. I find it very calming. They put me into kind of a meditative state. I find them to be just like very inspiring and uplifting, and they hold a lot of symbolic meaning for me. And when people come in and look at them, I love that there's this aspect of, like, I've heard a couple of times, so it reminds me of being a kid and looking up at the sky, which is kind of like this piece over here. That was something I did as a child as well, and I think it's really lovely to be able to, introduce those moments into everyday life. So I don't know yet exactly what that will all look like. I'm kind of taking a little bit of a break.
Well, you were a little busy.
I was a little busy.
Yeah.
I was a little busy. But I'll probably continue to explore similar themes, at least for a little while.
Well, I can definitely tell you the overall impact of this exhibition that I've heard from people is it makes them feel very calm and grounded and meditative, and it's also like we have extra windows in the gallery now with the best views.
I love that.
Well, is there anything you want to add to anything, or shall we turn it over for some questions?
I'm happy to take questions. That's great.
Who has the first question?
Can you tell us, you mentioned the moon.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us more about the moon in some of these pieces? It's in all but 2 or 3. But like, did the stages of the moon mean anything different for you, or evoke different feelings, or even the height in the sky, anything like that?
So the moon is, the moon feels like a companion to me. I also, I feel like most things in the world to me have some sense of presence or life force, and the moon became even more important to me recently when I was going through a pretty big transition in my life, and I found a lot of comfort in painting the moon, and I realized that it's this sort of presence, this element that I see all the time, every month. But it changes throughout the month. I see the full moon every month, and still I'm always surprised by it. I'm like, oh my God, there you are again. You're so beautiful. I'm sure that happens to a lot of folks out here in New Mexico. But at the same time, there's like this familiarity there, like it's an old friend, and we're kind of revisiting each other throughout the month. And that became very comforting to me through this period of transition, because the moon is like this constant as it goes through its cycles. And I thought that was really beautiful. In terms of like the phases of the moon, the symbolism there absolutely is, symbolism to the different moon phases. I'm noticing I'm doing a lot of like either full moons because they're so beautiful, and then I've done a couple of waning moons, no waxing moons, which is interesting. And I think that, the waning moon is kind of like, something closing out, like about to usher in a new stage. And I do like that. But I think compositionally, it just felt right like, I don't know, it didn't feel right to have the moon going the other direction in these pieces for some reason. And that was, I don't think I really thought that through. Yeah, it just felt right. Did that answer your question? Okay. But yeah, I had to hold myself back a couple of times from putting moons on these pieces. I don't know if anybody watched Portlandia, but there was this episode, put a bird on it, you know? Like to make something cuter or like more attractive, you just put a bird on it. And I kind of felt like it was like put a moon on it, you know, and I had to hold myself back. Yeah. Yes. Hi.
Hi.
I remember you came to my opening.
I did.
Yeah, nice to see you.
So did Anne help you choose your frames?
I'm sorry, could you say that
Did
again?
Anne help you choose your frames?
Did Anne help me choose my frame? That's a
I'm
great
curious. You have a
question.
uniform framing style, which is really nice. It brings out your composition and it doesn't necessarily do so in a traditional way because I'm not sure how much goldish there is. But anyway, it's really cool. And how did you go about deciding on pronounced getting force for that? Maybe she did. Knowing her background, she might have.
Yeah, thank you for noticing the frames. It was something I thought a lot about. Anne and I did have a chat about it. I really like the float frames. All of these are float frames because I feel like it gives a little breathing room between the painting and the frame, and that's what I wanted for this show, for it to feel very spacious. So yeah, they're all the same style, but chosen to complement the pieces. Most of them are these frames that actually have silver leaf on them, and that felt very sort of airy and ethereal to me.
So are they silver then? Maybe I thought they were gold because they pick up.
I know.
Yeah.
So they are technically silver leaf frames, but they do look a little gold or like champagne.
Mm-hmm.
They don't read as like stark silver. There's a lot of warmth to them. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the flow and the flow with black is just great. I mean,
Thank you.
I think that's part of the one reason. And you said you received a lot of comments about the calming.
Mm-hmm.
I think that float effect really adds to that. So anyway, it's really cool.
Yeah, and then we have the one dark frame over there.
Oh,
I think that was your favorite style.
Yes.
Did you want to say anything on that?
Oh, yeah, I stopped by and she had lots of frame samples and I looked at them and I said, that one's my favorite. And she said, that's the most expensive.
Yep.
So,
Are you going to comment on who framed them?
that's
Oh.
important.
I framed them. So I ordered them. I worked with a framing company, and I ordered them. A couple of them came assembled, but many of them I had to assemble myself, which was a learning curve. But it's a funny thing because I was very much out of my element doing that, but I also really like having my hands in every part of the process. I think it's an important part of the learning curve. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I wasn't intending on telling this story, but there was a moment in the studio where I had put together my first frame and I was trying to maneuver it, like turn it over with the piece, and these are big pieces, and I somehow managed to slice my finger. So I'm like trying to get everything right, and I'm like bleeding, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like blood, sweat, and tears. Like that is a real, that's a real thing. So anyway, it all worked out. It all worked out in the end. So thank you for asking. Yeah.
Didn't get any blood on the painting.
Not
No.
on the actual painting.
Framing can be dangerous.
No. Yeah. Yeah.
I have a related question to that, which is that this is your first solo exhibition, right? Congratulations.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
And I wonder what you learned about the lived experiences of artists in Santa Fe through this process. Like you were just talking about the blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah.
Zaguan does provide subsidized housing for artists on Canyon Road. It's almost impossible for an emerging artist to live on Canyon Road otherwise.
Yeah.
So what did you learn about that process of putting together an exhibition?
Yeah, it's crazy. Like the the process of putting together an exhibition, because there's the painting part, and then, or whatever your medium is, and I think a lot of people think like it sort of stops there, and in fact, a lot of the work was things like varnishing the pieces and figuring out the frames and, installing the frames, installing the show. So there are just like all of these other details that an artist and a gallerist has to consider to put on a show like this. And it's very intense. So I definitely have more of a perspective on that. I mean, not to say that I was completely removed from it, like being in the museum world and talking with artists and working with artists in the past, but it's definitely different when you're living it yourself. And I will also say, I mean, in terms of your point about, the space here and having that, I think I've realized how important it is as an artist to have a space where you can create. That is it's so important, like to have an adequate space, I should say. Because I had space before, but it wasn't enough, to do what I really wanted to do. So having adequate space and also having people in your life who really see not only what you're doing currently, but potential. And so having kind of like a mentor or creative collaborators like that is so important. And I think it's amazing to live in a place like Santa Fe where that is fairly accessible, maybe more so than in other locations. But yeah, it was tough. Yeah, thank you.
Because you also have a deadline.
Right, yeah. I mean, for doing an exhibition, you have a deadline. So it wasn't like I just got to figure all this stuff out as I went, and I had like a ton of space and time to do that. I was on a deadline, so I couldn't mess anything up, So yeah, the pressure was on.
Well, and then there's the titles and the prices.
There's all that
and
too.
having everything
Yeah.
photographed for publicity.
Yes,
So many details.
things like that, getting pieces photographed. They wouldn't fit in my car, so I had to like rent a van for 75 minutes from Home Depot to like, run them over to where I get photographed and back. And these are things that artists do all the time, and we just never see like that part of it, the hustle and bustle, the hustle, really. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add to any of that.
Oh. No.
No.
But I was going to say there many behind the scenes
Yeah.
gallerist things like that too,
Yeah.
that I think people don't know about.
Right. Yeah.
Why did you decide to do an exhibition? Did you have that in mind when you started this residency?
It is an option for the artists and the resident artists to have an exhibition here. You still do, have to have a sense of what you're going to do with the space and the time. So that was part of my application, was giving some sense of what I wanted to do, which was mostly about, going bigger. But why did I want to do an exhibition specifically? I just felt